He sat alone in a small-town bar, a quiet man with storm-gray eyes and a limp that spoke louder than words. The young Marines laughed until one of them asked for his call sign. 2 words left his lips. Reaper 1. And just like that, the room fell silent. Sometimes the heroes we forget are the ones sitting right beside us. If stories like this move you about courage, healing, and the power of kindness, consider subscribing to Soul Moment Story, where every tale reminds us that even in silence, some souls still shine the brightest. Now let's begin. The bar was dimly lit just enough to cast long shadows across the cracked wooden floor. Faint country music hummed from an old jukebox in the corner, blending with the clinking of glass and muffled laughter of young Marines fresh from Camp Pendleton. It was the kind of place where stories got taller with each shot poured, and where heroes came in quietly or not at all. In a booth near the back, a man sat alone. He didn't drink whiskey. He wasn't swapping war stories. He wasn't wearing a uniform or a ball cap with embroidered medals. He just sat there, motionless, calm, a middle-aged man with long graying hair, tied loosely at the nape of his neck, his worn green jacket folded neatly beside him on the seat. His hand, scarred and steady, cradled a simple cup of black coffee. A pair of dog tags peeked from beneath a plain gray t-shirt. He didn't look like much, but some men don't have to. "Hey, old-timer!" a voice rang out loud, cocky, slurred just enough to signal a few beers too deep. Laughter erupted from a table of 4 Marines near the bar, clean-shaven, built like linebackers, all fresh tattoos and louder bravado. Leading them was Dylan Brooks, tall, brash, barely out of his 20s, the kind of soldier who thought war was still a video game until the first shot rang out. "You served, huh?" Dylan asked, walking over with his beer in hand, cocking an eyebrow at the man's boots. "Or you just buy those at surplus stores for the discount?" The booth man didn't move. He didn't flinch, just blinked slowly and brought the cup to his lips. Dylan smirked. "Come on, man. Just messing with you. No offense. You got a call sign or something?" He laughed, looking back at his buddies. "Let me guess. Coffee 1, or maybe Old Ghost." Another round of chuckles echoed. Even the jukebox seemed to lower itself in shame. Still no reaction, just the steam rising from the cup. Then finally the man set it down gently, looked up. His eyes were steel, not angry, not sad, just still. Too still. He spoke one line. "Reaper 1. The room fell silent, as if the air had been sucked out by a black hole. One of the older Marines at Dylan's table froze his eyes, going wide, not in confusion, but in recognition. His beer slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. No one moved. Dylan blinked. "Wait, what did you just say?" The man didn't repeat himself. He just leaned back slightly and added, almost as if to himself, "That was a long time ago. These days, I'm just a dad trying to keep a promise." Behind the bar, Daniel Hayes, the bartender, went pale. The name echoed like thunder in his chest. Reaper 1. He hadn't heard that in over a decade. Back in Fallujah, that call sign came through the comms, only once during a blackout operation no one ever confirmed. Rumors said he saved 24 lives with a rifle and a prayer. Said he disappeared afterward, listed MIA. Said no one ever saw him again. Until now. And he was sitting in Daniel's bar, drinking black coffee. In silence, Dylan took a step back, his jaw clenched. You're saying you're that Reaper 1? But the man didn't answer. He didn't need to, because for the first time in his short military life, Dylan saw something he hadn't known to look for the absence of ego. No performance, no pride, just quiet. And quiet is what haunted most. Daniel cleared his throat, trying to steady the tremble in his hands, as he refilled a beer glass no one asked for. The ice cracked sharply. He didn't speak, didn't break eye contact with the man in the corner. There was reverence in his stare. Now, the way a man looks at a statue or a gravestone. Dylan's friends didn't laugh anymore. They didn't move. One of them whispered, "You think it's really him?" The older Marine who had dropped his beer didn't blink. "You don't joke about that name. Ever." Dylan turned back, now visibly sweating. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" The man Adam Miller finally looked him in the eye. "Because the kind of war I fought, it's not the kind you brag about." He slid the empty coffee cup forward. "And no one wins when they do." And the jukebox played on, but it sounded different now, slower, distant, like it was soundtracking a funeral. No one ordered another drink. No one cracked another joke. The bar had shifted. Dylan stood there, unsure of what to say, his earlier swagger draining from him like color from a fading bruise. "I'm sorry," he muttered, barely audible. Adam nodded once, not in forgiveness, just in acknowledgement. "You didn't know," he said quietly. "But maybe now. You'll think before assuming who someone used to be." He pulled a worn leather wallet from his back pocket to pay for the coffee. As he opened it, a small photo slipped onto the table. Dylan instinctively reached for it. A girl, maybe 10, blonde, beaming, holding a drawing of a stick figure Marine in a cape, scrawled in crayon underneath, "For my hero, Daddy." Dylan's throat tightened. Daniel spoke up, his voice hushed. "He's not drinking to forget. He's drinking to remember." The door swung open, but no one looked away from Adam now, not even for a second, because in a single sentence, a man had silenced an entire room. Not with a raised voice, not with a clenched fist, just with a name. Reaper 1. And now, no one dared to speak over it. Dylan Brooks couldn't move. The bar still held its breath, like a church after a sermon that hit too close to the bone. The sound of the jukebox had faded into the background, as if even the machine knew it had said too much. Glass still shimmered across the floor from the dropped beer, and at the center of it, all the man in the corner. Reaper 1 sat silently, the ghost of war sipping what was left of his coffee. Dylan's friends sat stiffly awkward in their skin. A few of them stared down at their drinks, trying to pretend they hadn't laughed minutes earlier. One of them even wiped a hand across his face, as if brushing off shame. But Dylan was burning, not with guilt. Not yet. It was something else first pride, wounded authority challenged. He couldn't just let the silence win. Couldn't let some stranger, some cripple in a booth walk in and rewrite the whole room. His ego wasn't built for that. So he forced a grin, forced a breath, and stepped forward again. "Well," Dylan said, voice trying for casual but landing closer to nervous. "You've got the whole place spooked, old man." He laughed, but no one joined him. Daniel behind the bar froze mid-wipe. The rag hung still in his hand. Dylan pushed ahead. "You really expect us to believe that? That you're Reaper 1? Adam didn't flinch. He just folded his hands calmly in front of him, eyes unmoving. Dylan took another swig of his beer, feigning ease. "Man, come on. That's like saying you're Bigfoot. Or Elvis. Or that one-eyed sniper ghost they made a movie about." He gestured to his friends for support, but no one responded. "That guy died in Stone Viper, didn't he?" He took another step forward, emboldened by his own voice. "You're sitting here in a bar drinking decaf, with a limp and a coffee tab. That doesn't sound like a legend to me." The insult hovered like a bad smell. Adam blinked once, slowly, then spoke quiet, even but direct enough to slice through the haze. "You think war leaves people looking like legends?" Son Dylan hesitated. Adam leaned forward slightly. There was no threat in his voice, no raised volume, just gravity. You think stories make men stronger or quieter? His hand reached for the photo again, gently slipping it back into his wallet. Reaper 1 had disappeared again. All that was left was a father, a tired one. But Dylan couldn't stop. He wasn't ready to back down, not when his pride still begged for a fight. Okay, Dylan said, pacing a little. Let's say you are him. What's that mean now? You saved people once? Sure. Cool. But that was what, 15 years ago? He shrugged. So now you're just a guy in a booth trying to score sympathy points with war stories and a sad face. That was the line. And Dylan knew it the moment the bartender moved. Daniel dropped the bar towel. He came around the counter slowly, his boots hitting the floor with the weight of memory. His eyes, once soft, service-worn, now flashed cold. You little punk, Daniel said, voice firm. You don't get it. Dylan blinked. Excuse me. You think you're tough because you've been through basic, and you've got a uniform that's still got the creases from shipping. He stepped closer, pointing not at Dylan but at Adam. You're looking at the reason I'm still breathing. You're looking at the reason half my unit made it out of Fallujah alive. Dylan scoffed, but Daniel didn't stop. Yeah, he didn't brag about it. You know why? Because legends don't have to talk. He turned to the others. Y'all think being a Marine's about the loudest voice in the room, about cracking beers and telling stories? His hand slammed the bar, suddenly making a few glasses jump. It's about who you are when no one's looking, about what you carry when no one thanks you for it. The words hit like a belt. Dylan looked back at Adam. The man still hadn't moved, and that somehow was worse than shouting, worse than any punch. The air hung heavy. Dylan took a step back, uncertain for the first time. He wasn't used to being the one on trial. His friends sat awkwardly. One leaned over and whispered, "Man, let it go." But Dylan's eyes flicked again to the coffee cup, to the folded jacket, to the calm face of the man who'd just let an insult pass through him like it meant nothing. And finally, something broke. Not anger, not shame, not yet, but confusion, something deeper. He lowered his beer. Why didn't you say anything? He asked quieter this time. Why didn't you stop me sooner? Adam finally looked at him again. This time something warmer flickered behind the coolness in his eyes. Because I wasn't here for you. A pause. I came in for coffee. And silence. He looked around the bar. But if the silence bothers you that much, maybe you should ask yourself why. Daniel let out a long breath, walked back behind the bar. The rest of the room remained quiet, not out of guilt. Not yet. But something else. Respect, or maybe recognition, of something too big for the room, too heavy for words. Dylan stood there a moment longer, then turned half out of retreat, half out of thought, and walked back to his table. The mood had changed, permanently. He didn't speak for a while, didn't touch his beer either. He just sat, staring, at the booth where legends didn't belong, but sometimes showed up anyway. Adam finished his coffee, set the cup down with care. He wasn't in a rush. He never was. Time moved differently for men who'd faced the end of it and lived. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small folded drawing one made in bright crayon colors. A house, a beach, a stick figure with a badge on his chest and a smile on his face. The words underneath read, "Come home soon, Daddy." His fingers lingered on it, not to remember, but to stay human. Then he tucked it away again and closed his eyes, letting the silence return not as punishment, but as peace. It was the kind of silence that felt earned, not forced, not awkward, not empty. It was the silence that followed impact, the kind you only hear after something has cracked open, after a truth too big for a room has spilled across the floor, like light breaking through a door left ajar. And now, no one moved. In the booth near the corner, Adam Miller sat quietly, his coffee cup long since emptied, his hands resting on the table, steady and unmoved. There was no need for words. Not after the name had been spoken. Reaper 1. For most in the bar, it was just a call sign, a spooky phrase, a cool-sounding alias whispered in dusty corners of military folklore. But for those who knew, for the few who had heard the stories, or worse, lived the echoes, it was something else entirely. A legend that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. The older Marine who dropped his beer, Sergeant Morales, now silent at the corner table, slowly stood up. His face was pale, jaw set firm. He didn't bother brushing the beer off his boots. His eyes were fixed on Adam, like he was staring into a war memorial come to life. Sir Morales said, voice cracking like a man who hadn't spoken aloud to his past in years, "I served in Operation Stone Viper. Delta Watch, Fallujah Sector." Adam looked up, meeting the man's eyes with quiet recognition. But he didn't speak. Not yet. Morales took a breath, stepped forward with slow reverence. There was a radio transmission. "Night op. We were pinned in a canyon ambush on all sides. Gunfire tearing down the rocks like rain. Our comms were fried, our evac 2 hours late. Everyone said we were dead men." He paused, his hands trembling at his sides. But then, someone came in. Silent. Surgical. Took out the perimeter in under 6 minutes. Cleared a path without backup. Just one guy. Black mask. Silencer. Night goggles. Didn't say a word. Just nodded once and vanished back into the dark. Morales' voice lowered. The last thing we heard on comms before we blacked out was a whisper. "Target secured. Reaper 1 out." The bar hung on every word. I thought it was a code name, an operation, a myth. He looked at Adam. I didn't think it was a man. Adam gave a small nod. It wasn't supposed to be. Dylan Brooks sat frozen at his table, his earlier cockiness replaced with something rawer, more fragile. He'd wanted to prove something that night, wanted to flex the confidence of youth, to earn the respect of his peers by cutting down a stranger. But he hadn't expected the stranger to be him, a living ghost, a relic of blood and bone, not marble and memory. "You were declared dead," Dylan murmured more to himself than anyone else. "They said Reaper 1 never made it out." Adam finally spoke again. His voice was even, but carried a quiet depth that seemed to shake the glasses on the shelf. That's how they wanted it. The bartender, Daniel Hayes, looked up sharply. "Wait. What do you mean?" Adam stared into the distance, not looking at anyone now. "I disobeyed an order. I broke protocol. There were civilians caught in the blast zone that night. Women, children. They told me to hold the perimeter. I went in anyway. A beat. We were never supposed to be there. They covered it up. Said the entire unit was lost. Cleaner that way." Daniel's hands clenched the bar rail. Sergeant Morales shook his head slowly. "They let you vanish. Because you did the right thing." Adam looked up. There was no bitterness in his expression. No anger. Just a weary kind of understanding. The kind only men who've seen too much can carry. "War's messy," he said. "Truth doesn't always make the paperwork." From behind the bar, Daniel reached under the counter. Not for a weapon, not for a drink, but for a small dust-covered box, an old cigar case filled with memorabilia from his time overseas. Medals, patches, a folded photo of a unit long disbanded. He opened it, pulled out a faded mission briefing sheet. "Stone Viper, Fallujah Sector 2007, he read aloud. "Reaper 1, presumed KIA. His voice cracked. He looked up. "They gave you a burial you never attended." Adam didn't blink. I never needed a grave. I had a daughter to raise. That was the moment everything shifted. Not just the tone in the bar, but the perception, the weight. This wasn't just some war story. some myth dredged up for late-night beers. This was real. A man who had lived through hell crawled out of it without a parade or pension or plaque. A man who had chosen to disappear, not because he had to, but because the world was easier to stomach when it didn't expect anything from you anymore. And now he was here. Just a dad in a bar. Dylan rose from his seat slowly. His boots felt heavier, like they carried the weight of every word he'd said earlier. He walked over, hesitant now, awkward in his body, and stopped a few feet from Adam's table. I didn't know, he said. I didn't think Adam held up a hand gently. It's all right, son. He offered a faint, knowing smile. Most people don't. Dylan swallowed hard. You saved people. You saved us. And no one gave you anything, Adam shrugged. I got coffee, that's enough. There was laughter at that. Soft. Humble. The kind that heals rather than mocks. Even Dylan smiled. Daniel raised his glass behind the bar. Here's to Reaper 1. Morales stood as well. To the ones who never came home and the ones who did, even if the world forgot them. Everyone else followed suit, except Adam. He lifted his coffee. To those still young enough to believe in something better. The toast rang out like a promise, and for once the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was sacred. Outside, the California dusk melted into night. The wind rustled against the old wooden sign above the bar, and headlights passed by without stopping, just like the world always did. Inside, though, something had changed. A forgotten name had been spoken. A truth buried under politics and dust had been brought back into the light. And in the corner of a nowhere bar, Reaper 1 had been seen again. Not as a killer, not as a ghost, but as a man. The crowd had quieted, but something deeper than silence filled the room now. It wasn't tension. That had lifted the moment Adam raised his coffee to the crowd's toast. It wasn't discomfort either. That had melted into awe, into something older reverence, maybe. What lingered now was curiosity, but the kind people didn't voice aloud. No one wanted to break the spell. No one except the man behind the bar. Daniel Hayes stood still, both hands resting on the polished counter. His breath was slower than before, his shoulders more squared. He looked like someone standing at attention, not because he had to, but because something in his bones told him it was time. His gaze hadn't left Adam's booth since the name was spoken, since Reaper 1 became real again. But now Daniel took a step back, opened the small fridge, poured himself a glass of water with hands steadier than they'd been all night. Then he did something no one expected. He walked around the bar, glass in hand, and stopped just a few feet from Adam's table. You don't remember me, do you? Daniel asked. Voice calm. Adam looked up, studied him for a long moment. The bartender's face was older now, the lines on his forehead deeper, but there was something familiar in the eyes. Brown. Honest. Unshaken. Adam tilted his head, curious. Should I? Daniel gave a half smile. Maybe not. I only saw your face for 3 seconds. Through the smoke, through the blood. But I remember the eyes. He exhaled slowly. Fallujah. 2007. The alley near the collapsed mosque. We were moving through the south corridor, 6 of us, pinned behind a burning Humvee. You pulled 2 guys out, Staff Sergeant Malone and Corporal Pierce. Then you turned to me. We made eye contact. Adam's brow furrowed softly but clearly. Daniel nodded. I was the one with the shattered leg. I couldn't move, could barely breathe. A pause. You didn't speak. You just lifted me like I weighed nothing. Got me to cover. Stuck a field syringe in my chest. Gave me a tourniquet that wasn't even standard issue. Black paracord. Adam blinked once. That detail struck home. I never forgot it, Daniel said. Not the pain, not the blood, But that look in your eyes, it wasn't panic, wasn't duty. It was like you were somewhere else, and this wasn't supposed to happen again. Adam leaned back. His voice came out low. You were the last one I carried out before the gunship came in. Daniel nodded. I know. I saw it from the stretcher. Saw you wave once to the airlift team, then vanish into the smoke. No name. No words. They said you were a hallucination. A wry grin touched his lips. But hallucinations don't leave paracord tourniquets tied in marine knots. The room listened in silence. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hum lower. Adam didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulled from the inner lining, a worn piece of black cord frayed at one end, looped at the other. He held it up. I made 6 of these, only gave away 4. Daniel's throat tightened. You remember Adam met his eyes. You were screaming when I found you. But not from pain, from fear, not for yourself, but your team. You begged me not to leave them. He paused. That's why I turned back a 3rd time. Daniel's face crumpled slightly at the edges. He didn't cry, but he came close. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and raised the glass of water. To the man I thought I imagined, he said, voice firm. Adam clinked his coffee cup gently against it. To the ones who lived. From his table, Dylan watched it all. Every word etched into his expression like stone being carved. It was one thing to hear a name, another to hear testimony. The difference between myth and memory. He turned to his buddies, young, shell-shocked, all still sobered by the night, and for the first time Dylan didn't try to make a joke, didn't fill the silence. He just watched. Daniel returned behind the bar more solemn than before. He didn't serve another drink for a while, just wiped glasses that didn't need wiping, kept his hands busy to still his heart. Adam remained seated, but now the quiet around him felt different. He wasn't alone in the booth anymore. He was surrounded by recognition, by quiet witnesses who now carried part of his story in their bones. Even if no one spoke, they knew. The myth had a heartbeat. Minutes passed. Then one of the younger Marines, a quiet, square-jawed kid named Mason, finally broke the silence. Sir, he said, standing halfway up, can I ask something? Adam looked over, nodded once. Mason swallowed. Why'd you disappear? I mean, you could have been famous. A medal, a ceremony, a legacy. Why not take it? The bar waited. Adam took a breath. Because some things are better buried. He looked down at his cup, then out the window, where the night was deepening. They would have made me a hero, painted it clean. But I wasn't clean. I broke orders. I disobeyed command. And I did it because rules didn't protect the people I saw bleeding in the sand. A pause. They wanted silence. And I needed peace. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't shame. It was truth. Delivered plainly without armor. And in that moment, everyone understood Adam Miller didn't disappear because he failed. He disappeared because he succeeded in a way they weren't ready to honor. The front door creaked open. An older couple walked in, saw the stillness of the room, and hesitated. Daniel offered them a small wave. But their entrance brought with it something else, a break in the trance. Life returning. Quiet chatter resuming in the corners, glasses raised, shoulders relaxed. The bar had exhaled. But the story had only begun to unfold. Adam stood slowly. His knee popped. His body reminded him of all the miles it had carried others. He left a tip on the table, not much, just enough. Daniel met him near the register. You heading out? Adam nodded. It's late. You need a ride? Adam smiled. No, my ride's waiting. He turned toward the door, but before he left, he stopped, looked back at Daniel. You kept it, he said, nodding toward the paracord Daniel had quietly slipped into his pocket. Daniel nodded. Every night I pour drinks for lost souls. I remember the one who came back. Adam gave him a small salute, 2 fingers to the temple military sharp, and walked out into the night. The door shut behind him with a soft click, and Adam Miller stepped into the quiet of the parking lot. The night air was cool against his face, California's ocean breeze threading through the trees like a whispered hymn. He paused at the edge of the sidewalk, letting the wind wash over him as if it might carry away the weight of what had just happened inside. But peace never came that easily. Not for men like him. Inside the bar, the atmosphere had settled, but no one returned fully to their drinks. Dylan Brooks leaned forward in his seat, elbows on the table, head down. Not in shame, but in thought. He wasn't the same man who had laughed an hour ago. His ego was still intact, but now it shared space with something unfamiliar respect. From behind the counter, Daniel Hayes watched him. "You all right?" the bartender asked quietly. Dylan nodded. "Yeah, just sorting some things in my head." Daniel half smiled. "Welcome to the club." Dylan looked up. "How'd you carry that all these years? Knowing it was him. Knowing no one believed," Daniel exhaled. "Because I didn't need them to believe. I knew." That was enough. A soft, scraping sound broke the quiet. Dylan turned. Something had slid off the booth table where Adam had been sitting. A small, worn leather wallet, half open, one corner sticking out. Dylan stood, slowly walked over, picked it up. It was light soft with age. He didn't open it at first, just turned it over in his hands, unsure whether he had the right. Then a folded photo slipped free. Face down. He reached down, hesitated, then gently turned it over. It was a picture of a girl. Maybe 10 years old, with wild blonde curls, missing a front tooth, and eyes full of sunshine. She wore a red backpack and stood in front of a school gate, holding a handmade sign that said, "In messy marker, welcome home." "Daddy missed you more than the moon," on the corner written in small, neat handwriting. "For my hero, Daddy." Dylan felt something in his chest tighten. Not guilt. Not quite. It was something purer. Recognition. Not of the girl, but of the man who carried that photo in silence, of what it must mean to him, of what it must cost to leave a piece of your soul at war and still show up day after day to raise a child in peace. He brought the photo to the bar. "Adam left this." Daniel took one look and nodded. "He'll want it back." But neither of them moved to chase him. Instead, they placed the wallet gently behind the counter as if it were sacred. "Is that his daughter?" someone asked from the other side of the bar. Daniel nodded. "Yeah. Name's Maya. He brings her in sometimes on Sundays. Orders her a grilled cheese and cherry soda." There was a pause. "She calls him Iron Man," Daniel added with a smirk. "Says he's stronger than Captain America and quieter than Batman." A few soft chuckles stirred the air. "She's wrong," he said quietly. "He's stronger than all of them." Dylan stood in place, arms crossed. His voice came low. He said he was just a dad trying to keep a promise. Daniel glanced up. "Yeah. And I don't think anyone in this room doubts he's been keeping it." Meanwhile, outside, Adam walked slowly across the parking lot toward his truck. The old Chevy had seen better years, faded paint a crack in the windshield, and one side mirror duct-taped in place. But it ran smooth, reliable, like the man who drove it. He opened the driver's door, slid in with a wince, and sat back for a moment, hand resting over the steering wheel. On the dashboard, a Polaroid was taped in place, a copy of the same photo from his wallet. Maya's grin stared back at him, sunlight in her cheeks. He reached out, touched it gently with a finger. Then his phone buzzed. Maya, 8:47 p.m. "Hi, Daddy. I finished my science project early. Can we get ice cream tonight? I saved a spoon for you." Adam smiled, A quiet, full kind of smile, the kind that lived in his eyes more than on his lips. He typed back, "You got it." "Bug, mint chocolate chip," her reply came almost instantly. "Yes, you're the best. Hurry home." He chuckled, and for a moment the years washed away. The memories, the silence, the guilt. For just a second, he was no longer Reaper 1, no longer the ghost of a forgotten war. He was just a father, just her father. Back inside, Daniel poured a drink for a man who didn't ask for one. He set it down, looked across the room and said, "You know, there's something about the guys who come home quiet." Dylan glanced over. "They're not running from what they did," Daniel continued. "They're running toward what they still have, and trying like hell not to mess it up." He paused. Adam didn't leave the military because he was broken. He left because he wasn't. Dylan thought for a moment, then asked, "You ever tell him that?" Daniel shook his head. "Nah, some things don't need to be said." Outside, Adam shifted the truck into gear. He didn't play music. He didn't turn on the radio. He just drove windows down the night wind, cool against his skin the sound of tires on pavement, like a lullaby. Up ahead, the glow of a gas station illuminated a lone figure, a teenage boy changing a flat tire with one hand and texting with the other. Adam slowed, rolled down his window. "You good?" The kid looked up, startled. Yeah, I think so. My dad's on his way." Adam nodded. "All right then, be safe." As he drove off, the kid muttered, "Thanks, mister." Adam didn't reply. He just kept driving. Toward home. Toward a little girl with a backpack and a secret stash of ice cream. Toward the one mission that still mattered. The door creaked open again. But this time, it wasn't just the sound that made everyone look up. It was the presence. He stepped in like the wind had pushed him forward, slow, purposeful, composed. Not a big man in size, but something about his frame demanded space. His uniform was pressed to perfection. Insignia glinting beneath the warm yellow bar lights. 4 rows of service ribbons. Combat badge. Bronze oak leaves at the shoulder. His hair, short and salt gray, didn't move with the breeze, but his eyes scanned the room with a kind of stillness that was born from battle, not bureaucracy. Major Donovan had entered, and for a moment it felt like the war had walked back in. Daniel froze mid-pour behind the bar. Dylan looked up from his stool and felt his stomach pull tight again. Even Morales, the older Marine at the corner table, straightened reflexively out of instinct, out of habit, out of the kind of respect they didn't teach in basic. The Major's gaze swept the room once, then he spotted the empty booth. Adam was gone. His eyes flicked to Daniel sharpened questioning. Bartender Donovan said, voice even but edged with steel. "Was there a man here about 20 minutes ago? Civilian clothes, long hair." Quiet. Daniel hesitated. "Depends who's asking." Donovan stepped closer. "Let's not pretend Sergeant Hayes." Daniel stiffened. That title hadn't been spoken to him in years. "I know who you are," Donovan continued. "Fallujah, 2007. You lost a leg and still got 3 of your men home." Daniel nodded slowly. "And you were the officer who signed off on the Stone Viper blackout." Donovan's jaw tightened just a little. Dylan stood. "Wait, you knew about all that?" Donovan turned to him, studying the young Marine. "You're part of the Pendleton crew?" "Yes, sir. What's your name?" "Brooks. Lance Corporal Dylan Brooks." Donovan nodded once. "Then you just met a man who doesn't exist." The room went still again. Daniel spoke softly. "He came in for coffee." "That's all?" Donovan didn't blink. "Did he leave anything?" Dylan glanced toward the bar where the wallet still rested gently behind the register. Daniel shook his head. "He left something, but I'm not giving it to anyone who calls him a ghost." Donovan stepped closer slowly. His tone softened, not weak, but human. "I'm not here to arrest him or expose him. I came because I owe him something." The words hung in the air like smoke. Donovan turned and looked at the empty booth, his eyes tracing the grooves in the wood, the forgotten coffee stain on the tabletop, the seat cushion still warm with memory. Then he sat down. Not because he was tired, but because something in him needed to feel that space. He placed his cap on the table. "I was his commanding officer during Operation Stone Viper," he said, voice low but strong. "I authorized the mission. I wrote the report. I signed the names." He looked around the bar, and I buried a man who was still breathing. Everyone listened. You've all heard pieces of the story. Reaper 1, the specter in the sand, the man who walked through enemy fire like it was rain. But you don't know what came after. Donovan exhaled. Adam Miller disobeyed an order. He entered the kill zone after we called it off. He breached civilian compounds to pull children out. He ignored protocol, violated calm's silence, and risked everything. He tapped his fingers against the table slowly. I was furious, ready to court-martial him, until I saw the drone footage, until I heard the comm logs, and more importantly, until I saw the faces of the civilians he pulled from that nightmare. He paused. They weren't collateral. They were people, families, daughters, sons. His eyes dropped, and I realized the only one who had followed the real mission was him. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "So why'd you cover it up?" Donovan looked him dead in the eyes. "Because the people above me weren't ready to admit we'd made a mistake. So they buried the truth, declared the whole unit lost, gave me a commendation and told me to move on. And Adam, they marked him MIA. No funeral, no family contact, no recognition." He clenched his jaw. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Dylan took a shaky breath. "But now you're here." Donovan looked at him. "Because I heard a whisper last week. A veteran at the VA center said there was a man who looked a lot like Reaper 1, limping quiet, bringing his daughter to speech therapy sessions in Oceanside." His fingers tapped again. I followed that trail. Quietly. Carefully. He looked around. And when I found this bar and saw the plate on the truck outside, I knew. A long silence passed. Then Daniel spoke. "He left just before you came in. Said his ride was waiting." Donovan stood. His daughter Daniel nodded. "Yeah, 10 years old. Firecracker. Looks just like him if you subtract a few scars and add a halo." That made the Major smile softly, genuinely. He placed something on the table. A sealed manila envelope, thick official. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "It's a file," Donovan said. "Declassified 2 weeks ago. Contains everything. Mission logs, comm transcripts, drone footage, and one very overdue recommendation for the Medal of Honor." He looked at Daniel. "If he comes back, give it to him. Tell him, no more shadows. Not from me." Donovan turned to leave. But just as he reached the door, Dylan called after him. "Sir." He paused. "If all that's true, what should we call him now?" Donovan glanced back, eyes gleaming. "Call him what he's always been. A father, a protector, a man who never needed the title to be the legend." And then he walked out into the night. Back in the bar, the envelope sat on the table, sealed tight. But somehow, the room felt lighter. Because truth had finally been spoken. Not shouted, not forced. Just delivered. The visitor had come and gone. But what he left behind was a reckoning. Not just for Adam, but for everyone who had ever underestimated the quiet man in the corner. The manila envelope sat untouched on the center of the booth, its presence commanding more attention than a full platoon in uniform. Thick, sealed, stamped with the faded insignia of the Department of Defense. It looked like something that should be locked in a vault, not resting under a flickering Budweiser sign in a roadside bar. But that was the thing about truth. It rarely showed up where it was supposed to. Daniel Hayes stared at it from behind the bar. He'd seen classified files before, back when he still wore the green and carried orders tucked into the inner pocket of his flak jacket. But this wasn't just paper. This was redemption. And maybe something even more dangerous. Dylan approached the booth slowly, eyes glued to the envelope like it might burn through the table. "What's in it?" he asked. Daniel gave a dry chuckle. "Everything they never wanted you to know." The younger Marine swallowed. "Should we open it?" Daniel shook his head. "It's not ours to open." He walked over, picked it up with a careful hand, and slid it behind the bar next to the photo Adam had dropped earlier. He looked at both two artifacts from different worlds, one made of government ink, the other of a child's love. Both said the same thing: this man mattered. Outside, the streetlight buzzed as a black truck eased back into the parking lot. Adam Miller was behind the wheel eyes, scanning the storefront with quiet suspicion. Maya sat beside him, a half-eaten mint chip cone in her hand. "Why are we back?" "Daddy," she asked, her voice sticky with sugar. Adam didn't answer right away. He'd driven past once already, seen the shape of a man in uniform walking out the front door. His mind had snapped into alert, the way only a soldier's could, scanning exits, calculating angles. He didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. "Just left something behind," he said gently. The bell above the bar jingled as Adam stepped inside. Maya skipped in behind him, still licking her ice cream. The moment he crossed the threshold, all conversation ceased. It wasn't awkward this time. It was respectful. Daniel looked up, gave a small nod. "We saved something for you." He reached under the bar and pulled out both the photo and the envelope. Adam accepted the photo first, smiling as he tucked it carefully into his wallet. Then his eyes landed on the envelope. He didn't touch it. "Didn't need to. I saw him," Adam said softly. "In the lot. Watching." Daniel nodded. "Major Donovan. He left that. Said it was time." Adam stared at the thick seal expression, unreadable. Time for what Dylan asked cautiously. Adam let out a quiet breath. Time for ghosts to speak. He took the envelope and walked back to the same booth, his booth now as if the seat had remembered him. Maya climbed in beside him, swinging her legs. "Can I color, Daddy?" He pulled a small notepad and a few crayons from his jacket pocket, always prepared. "Of course, sweetheart." She hummed a little tune as she started scribbling flowers and stars. Adam, meanwhile, stared at the envelope like it was a coffin. And slowly, carefully, he opened it. The first page was a cover sheet, Operation Stone Viper, declassified. Below it a line of text, subject Miller, Adam J. Call, sign Reaper 1, status MIA, incorrect. He read page after page. Mission details redacted, satellite imagery, radio logs, testimonies from survivors, all matching the same pattern. One man, silent, precise, saved us. There was even a transcript of a drone operator breathless on comms. "Sir, we've got eyes on Reaper 1. He's alive. He just took down the entire eastern flank alone. Repeat, he's alive." Maya tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy." He blinked, looked down. "Yes." "Bug." She pointed at the document. "Is that about the army stuff?" Adam hesitated. "Yes." She nodded. "Is it a good story?" He looked at her drawing stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "No," he said quietly. "But you made it one." Daniel approached slowly, as if not wanting to disturb a moment that wasn't his. "You okay?" Adam nodded once. I knew they kept records, but I didn't know. They kept this much. Daniel looked at the final page in Adam's hand. It was a letter. Signed, stating that Major Adam J. Miller had been submitted officially for the Medal of Honor. Dylan moved closer, eyes wide. "That's the real deal." Adam closed the file. "Doesn't matter." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" He tapped the photo tucked in his wallet. "I already have my medal." Silence again. But now it felt earned. a sacred kind of quiet. Then Dylan spoke. I wish I could say something he said, something that doesn't sound small. Adam turned to him, expression soft. You just did. Dylan straightened. Then maybe I can do something instead. He extended a hand. Adam looked at it for a beat, then shook it. Thank you, Dylan said, and meant it. Behind the bar, Daniel poured 2 cups of coffee. One he brought to Adam. The other he placed next to the sealed Medal of Honor recommendation still unread. No charge, Daniel said. Call it back. Pay. Adam smiled faintly. This bar doesn't serve debts, just memories. Daniel grinned. Well, I remember damn well who you are. Maya held up her picture. Look, Daddy, it's you and me at the beach. Adam looked at it, his face softening. Above the figures in crayon, she'd written, My hero. Always. He folded it carefully and placed it beside the file. One made of bureaucracy. One made of love. And only one of them mattered. That night, as the bar emptied and the lights dimmed, the booth remained full, not of people, but of meaning. And somewhere deep in the records of the Department of Defense, a file had changed status. Reaper 1. Status no longer Mom, because now he was seen. Fully. Finally. And that was all he ever needed. Outside the bar, the sky had turned ink black. The world had grown quiet, like it too was listening. Only the low hum of streetlights and the distant buzz of passing cars remained, as if the night itself was holding its breath, not in fear, but in reverence. Inside, Adam Miller sat in the booth, like a man at peace for the first time in years. The secret file rested on the table, still open, but untouched. The final page, the Medal of Honor recommendation, lay beneath Maya's drawing of the 2 of them on a beach. Crayon and combat innocence, and blood side by side. 2 testaments of a life lived for something more than glory. Maya had fallen asleep against her father's arm, her head tucked into his side, one hand still loosely clutching a green crayon. Adam looked down at her with a gaze that could crack the hardest stone. This was his mission now, this small, sleeping miracle. Not the firefights, not the call signs, just her. His phone buzzed gently in his jacket pocket. He checked it, careful not to stir her. Unknown caller, secure line. He didn't hesitate. Yeah, he answered softly. A beat. Then a familiar voice came through the static. I saw you. Adam's shoulders stiffened slightly. Donovan, yeah. I didn't want to interrupt. She looked happy. Adam looked down at Maya again. She is. You're not going to respond to the citation, are you? No. A pause on the line. Then why Adam let the silence linger before answering. Because the men who matter already know, and the ones who don't never will. Donovan was quiet for a long moment. Then, that file clears your name, Adam. You don't have to hide anymore. Adam's voice was calm but resolute. I was never hiding. I was healing. Donovan didn't argue. He just said softer now. The Pentagon won't like that answer. Adam almost smiled. They haven't liked me since '07. Another pause. Then Donovan's voice dropped lower. You know they might still come. The ones who kept this buried, they're not fond of ghosts. Adam looked out the window, watched the wind ruffle the branches of a nearby tree. Let them come. I've got a reason to stay standing now. Maya stirred beside him. Her voice came small and sleepy. Daddy, I'm here, Bug. She rubbed her eyes. Are we going home? Soon? She blinked slowly, then whispered, I dreamed about Mommy. Adam felt his chest tighten, not from pain, but from memory. He brushed a hand through her curls. What was she doing, smiling at us? She said, you still keep your promises. He closed his eyes for a second, pressing his lips to the top of her head. Always, he whispered. Across the room, Dylan leaned against the bar, watching everything with a newfound stillness in his posture. The brashness of his earlier self was gone, sanded down by humility. He looked at Daniel. How do you even begin to understand a guy like that? Daniel poured another coffee, not for Adam this time, but for himself. You don't, he said. You just listen when he speaks, and make damn sure he knows he's not alone. The door creaked again. But this time, it was a child's voice that stirred the room. Daddy, can we go see the stars now? Adam looked down, surprised. The stars? Maya nodded. You promised. One day, when the sky was really dark and everything was quiet, we'd go look for the ones that don't blink. You said those are the ones that watch over us. He smiled, soft and wide. I remember. He stood carefully, lifting her into his arms. The years might have stacked weight on his body, but holding her was always easy. He nodded. A thank you to Daniel, then turned to Dylan. You ever want to understand the people who came before you? Adam said, stop chasing medals. Dylan met his eyes. What should I chase instead? Adam didn't miss a beat. Moments, the kind you never get twice. Then he walked to the door. As he stepped out, a crisp breeze swept through the parking lot, the kind of wind that carried beginnings more than endings. Maya pointed up. There, she squealed softly. That one. It's not blinking. Adam followed her finger and found the small silver dot hanging still above the tree line. Then that's ours, he said. They walked to the truck slowly. Not rushed. No alarms. No helicopters overhead. Just a father and his daughter, beneath a sky big enough to hold all their memories. Before climbing in, Adam glanced back at the bar one last time. Inside, no one had sat in his booth again. The file remained with Daniel untouched. A reminder. A monument. But Adam didn't need to carry it anymore. He had everything he needed in his arms. A promise kept. A life reclaimed. And the gentle voice of a child who believed he could touch the stars. The bar hadn't changed. Same cracked stools. Same flickering neon signs. Same old country song humming low in the background, like it had never stopped since the war ended. Whichever war that might have been. But the people inside, they were different now. There was something in the air, not just silence, but reverence. The kind that lingers in church pews or beside flag-draped coffins. The kind that doesn't come from words, but from what happens when words finally stop. At the booth near the window, the file remained unopened, its contents now known, but its presence still heavy like a folded flag. And at the bar, Dylan Brooks sat stiffly, his boots resting squarely on the floor spine. Straight jaw set, but not from tension, from purpose. He looked toward the door where Adam Miller had just stepped out with Maya, his daughter's laughter still echoing faintly behind the closing of the door. Then Dylan stood up, not impulsively, not performatively, deliberately. He picked up his glass of beer, only half full, and turned toward the others. I didn't know who he was, Dylan said, voice firm but respectful. The chatter that had slowly begun to return hushed again. I didn't recognize him when I first saw him. Thought he was just another quiet guy taking up a booth, another veteran with stories collecting dust. He swallowed, then continued. And I laughed. I made jokes about his boots, his limp, his age. Dylan paused. But what I didn't know, what none of us really knew, was that we were sitting in the same room with the man they told us didn't exist. He turned toward the booth. With Reaper 1, Daniel behind the bar didn't speak, didn't move. He just watched his eyes reflecting the soft light above, like a veteran watching a new recruit take their first real step into manhood. Dylan raised his glass. I used to think honor was about what you wore, your stripes, your badges, your record. He looked at the doorway where Adam had just exited. But tonight, I saw something different. His voice wavered just slightly, but only slightly. Honor is the man who walks away from medals because he's too busy showing up for his kid. Honor is doing the right thing when no one's watching and still not talking about it when everyone is. Honor is silence that speaks louder than applause. He lifted his glass higher now, to the ones who never asked to be thanked. A beat to the ones who came back and kept living. There was a moment, quiet, full, where the room just stood still. And then it happened. A Marine at the back table stood and raised his glass. Then another, and another, until the entire bar, every man, every woman, every old soldier and young recruit, stood in unison lifting what they held in their hands. Some held beer, some coffee. One man lifted only a hand, but it was enough. Daniel finally moved. He walked to the booth, picked up the unopened Medal of Honor recommendation, and placed it beside the cash register, beside a sticky note that read, "For the man who earned it without ever needing it." Then he turned to face the crowd. "We'll frame it tomorrow," he said. Everyone nodded, because some medals weren't made to be worn on a chest. They were made to sit in quiet places and be remembered. Outside in the truck, Adam watched the windows. He could see the silhouettes rising, the glasses held high. He didn't hear the words. He didn't need to. The gesture said everything. He sat back in the seat, hands on the wheel, and closed his eyes for just a moment. Beside him, Maya leaned her head against the window, humming softly. "Daddy," she said. "Why are they standing?" He looked over at her. His voice came quiet, steady. "Because sometimes people finally see what was always right in front of them." Back inside, the toasts were ending, but the feeling remained. People returned to their seats a little quieter than before, a little straighter in posture, as if they had been recalibrated by something intangible. Dylan remained standing a moment longer. He turned to Daniel. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" Daniel poured a fresh cup of coffee. "Maybe." Dylan nodded. "If he does, I want to buy him a drink." Daniel smiled. "He doesn't drink much," he said, "but he's partial to black coffee and a grilled cheese sandwich." Dylan laughed softly. "Then make it two." Out in the parking lot, Adam drove slowly down the gravel path, the headlights painting long golden arcs across the trees. He wasn't in a rush. Not tonight. Tonight he had been seen. Not for the rifle, not for the call sign, but for the quiet things, for the way he folded his daughter's backpack each morning, for the way he remembered every face he couldn't save, for the way he sat in the same booth week after week, holding on to peace, like it was the last line of defense he had left. In the rearview mirror, the bar grew smaller, but the light stayed with him. Inside the cab, Maya reached out and pressed a button on the radio. A slow country song came on. Gentle guitar, gravel voice. She smiled. "Sing with me, Daddy." He chuckled. "You start," he said. So she did, and Adam joined in off-key but steady. It wasn't the kind of song they played at military funerals, but it was the kind people remembered, because it was about home, about love, about men who showed up quietly and stayed. Back in the bar, someone scribbled 3 words on a napkin and tacked it to the corkboard near the restroom. "Reaper lives here." No one took it down, because in this bar on this night, that wasn't graffiti, it was gospel. The storm didn't come with thunder. Not at first. It came with headlights. 2 black SUVs rolled to a quiet stop just past midnight, parking across the street from the bar. No screeching tires, no flashing sirens, just a slow, calculated arrival, like the kind of silence that tells you something is wrong before your brain has time to catch up. Inside the bar, the last of the regulars had filtered out. Only Daniel Hayes remained, wiping down the same already clean counter. The Medal of Honor recommendation still sat behind the bar, now enclosed in a clear plastic sleeve, placed carefully between a vintage jukebox and a jar of toothpicks. He was halfway through locking up when he noticed the vehicles. Tinted windows, government plates, no lights. His fingers paused on the deadbolt. Across town, Adam Miller stood in the narrow hallway of his home towel slung over his shoulder. Maya's giggles echoed faintly from the bathroom, where she was brushing her teeth, with her usual flair for chaos, half foam, half bubbles, all joy. He glanced at the clock. 12:04 a.m., late. But bedtime had come with stargazing and grilled cheese, and Adam had never been one to rush the moments that mattered. "Don't forget to rinse," he called out. "Already did," she shouted back. He smiled. Then, almost imperceptibly, his smile faded. A vibration buzzed from his back pocket. Not the main phone, the other one. The one he hadn't used in 6 years. He pulled it out slowly. Unregistered line. One message received eyes on. They moved early. Not local. Adam's expression didn't change, but his breath did. Slower. Deeper. He turned off the hallway, light walked quietly to the front window, and peeled back the curtain by a half-inch. Nothing on the street yet, but that didn't mean they weren't near. He looked back toward the bathroom where Maya had now started humming "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" in a way only a 10-year-old could loud off key and perfect. He tapped a small code into a panel near the closet. 3 short beeps, 1 long. A panel slid open, revealing a reinforced lockbox, dusty but functional. He didn't reach for a weapon. He reached for a folder, a will, a sealed letter, and an old dog tag engraved simply R1, if found, protect her. At the bar, the door rattled. Daniel didn't flinch. He stepped forward and opened it before they could knock. 3 men stood in tailored suits. Not military, not local law. Clean-shaven, cold-eyed, the kind of men who didn't show ID unless they were planting it later. "Can I help you?" Daniel asked. The one in front spoke with the precision of a scalpel. "We're looking for a man named Adam Miller." Daniel's smile was slow. "Yeah, so is half the country. You planning to thank him or bury him?" The agent didn't blink. "We just want to talk." Daniel folded his arms. "You boys always travel with 2 armored vehicles for a conversation." Still no blink. "Where is he?" Daniel's answer was soft but steel-lined. "Home, with his daughter, which is exactly where he's supposed to be." The second agent stepped forward. "We're under authorization to bring him in for questioning. Section 14C, unauthorized concealment of MIA combat assets." Daniel gave a dry laugh. "You gonna charge him for being alive now?" The lead agent leaned in slightly. "This isn't about the past. It's about what he might know. The chain of command wants full control of what he's carrying mentally and otherwise." Daniel's smile vanished. "He's not carrying anything. He's rebuilding. Something you bureaucrats wouldn't understand." He stepped forward toe to toe. "You've had your silence for 15 years. Now you want to show up because the truth scares you." The third man reached for something in his jacket. Daniel's hand shot out, grabbing a bar stool mid-motion, ready to swing. But the lead agent raised a hand, stopping his team. "We'll find him," he said flatly. "With or without your help." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You won't get within 50 feet of that girl." The agent looked him dead in the eye. "That depends on him." Back at home, Adam had tucked Maya into bed, her room dimly lit by a small nightlight shaped like a cartoon fox. She was already drifting, her breathing soft and steady, a crayon still clutched in one hand, like a weapon against nightmares. Adam stood over her for a long time, arms crossed, the dog tag, now around his neck. Then he stepped outside into the cool night. The air was still. Too still. He didn't see the SUVs, but he felt them. He walked around to the side of the house, knelt near the garden and lifted a flat stone. Beneath it, in a waterproof case, was a satellite communicator. He flicked it on and typed one line, "Storm is here. My priority, Maya." Seconds later, the response pinged back. "Understood. Eyes on. You're not alone." He closed the case, stood and looked up at the sky. No stars tonight, only clouds. Back at the bar, the SUVs were gone. But they hadn't left. They'd simply relocated like wolves circling the tree line. Daniel locked up the final latch on the door. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hey," he said when the other line picked up. "You got any of those old boys from Delta still bouncing around down south?" A low chuckle answered. "Yeah. Thought so. Tell them Reaper 1's dust just got stirred." That night, Adam didn't sleep. He sat in the living room with an old journal in his lap, its leather cover worn from years of quiet use. He wrote one line. "I made peace with dying. I never made peace with being hunted while trying to live." Then he turned the page and wrote another. "She's what keeps me human." He looked toward the hallway where Maya slept and whispered to himself, "Come if you must, but not tonight." The morning came quietly. No knocks, no sirens, no black SUVs in sight. But Adam Miller knew better than to trust what he didn't see. He stood on the porch with a mug of black coffee in one hand and a carpenter's pencil tucked behind his ear. From a distance, he looked like any other single dad fixing up an old house. Shirt sleeves, rolled boots, half-laced toolbox at his feet. But his eyes told another story. Eyes that hadn't slept. Eyes that had counted every headlight between 1 Menard and 5 Samartuoam. Inside, Maya was eating cereal straight from the box, feet swinging under the kitchen stool, humming off-key to a Taylor Swift song. Her crayon drawing from last night's stick figures under the stars now hung proudly on the fridge with a magnet that read, "World's okayest dad." Adam watched her through the window. She was his North Star. Everything else was just terrain. The knock came at 9:07 a.m. Not heavy, not rushed. 3 short taps, military rhythm. Adam opened the door slowly. Dylan Brooks stood there holding 2 cups of gas station coffee and a look that carried more weight than caffeine. "Didn't want to show up empty-handed," Dylan said. Adam raised an eyebrow. "You think that'll bribe me?" Dylan smirked. "I think it's a peace offering." Adam took the cup, stepped aside, and gestured him in. They sat on the porch steps, coffee steaming in the cool morning air. The sky was overcast gray, but not yet threatening. The kind of sky that asked questions without speaking. Dylan cleared his throat. "I heard about the suits." Adam didn't reply. They came to the bar, talked to Daniel. He told them where to shove it. Adam gave a quiet nod. "I wanted to come by," Dylan continued, "because if something's coming, I don't want you facing it alone." Adam looked over. His expression was calm but unreadable. "I mean it," Dylan said. "I've got training. I'm still active. I can stand a post, watch the perimeter, whatever you need." Adam stared into the distance. "You got a girl back home." Dylan blinked. "What, a sister, a mom? Somebody who'd miss you if you didn't come home." "Yeah, my mom. And a little niece who thinks I'm Captain America." Adam sipped his coffee. "Then your job is to stay alive, not follow ghosts." Dylan's posture tightened. "With respect, sir, this isn't just about you." Adam turned to him fully, now his voice still quiet but firmer. "Yes, it is. Because the people coming after me, they're not looking to fight a war. They're looking to erase a man. You step in their way, you don't become a hero. You become a witness. And witnesses disappear." Dylan didn't back down. "Then let me disappear beside you." Adam looked away. "That's the difference between us, son. I've already disappeared once. I'm not dragging anyone else into the dark with me." A long silence passed. Birds chirped in the trees. A breeze passed through the tall grass along the fence. Then Adam spoke again, softer this time. "You want to help me?" Dylan nodded. "More than anything. Then don't fight beside me." Adam turned, locking eyes with the young Marine. "Fight differently." Dylan frowned. "I don't follow." Adam leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "They trained us to believe that strength comes from holding the line, firing the shot, kicking down the door. But they never taught us what to do after the dust settles, how to raise a child without fear, how to sit with silence without shaking, how to choose mercy when vengeance feels easier." He took a breath. "The hardest fight I've ever had wasn't Fallujah or Kandahar. It was sitting in a hospital hallway holding my daughter's hand while she asked me if Mommy was going to wake up, and knowing the answer was no, and still choosing to be present." Dylan looked down at his boots. "I thought being a soldier meant protecting people." Adam nodded. "It does. But protection isn't always about weapons. Sometimes it's just being there. Steady. Silent. Consistent." He pointed toward the window, where Maya was now feeding a goldfish one flake at a time. "She doesn't need Reaper 1. She needs someone who shows up for pancakes, and science fairs, and nightmares." Dylan was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "So what do you want me to do?" Adam finished his coffee and set the cup down beside him. "I want you to go back to base. Train hard. Lead better. Be the guy in your unit who listens first." He paused. "And when someone shows up who doesn't talk much, doesn't fit in, looks a little too calm for the chaos around him, don't mock him. Protect him. Because that man's been to hell and back. And if he's still standing, it's for a reason." Dylan nodded slowly. "I can do that." Adam smiled. "I know." They stood. Dylan offered his hand. Adam took it. Not as soldier to soldier, but as man to man. "Thank you," Dylan said. Adam shook his head. "No." "Thank you. For listening." Dylan turned to leave, but paused at the steps. "You really think they're coming?" Adam looked out at the sky. Clouds were thickening now. Darker. "They always come. Eventually. But this time, I'm not afraid. Because I've already made my choice." Dylan didn't ask what that choice was. He already knew. That night, Adam sat on the porch again. Maya curled up beside him with a blanket, her head on his chest. They watched the wind bend the tall grass, the stars tucked behind a curtain of gray. "I don't like storms," she whispered. Adam kissed the top of her head. "Storms pass, bug. They always do." She looked up. "How do you know?" He smiled. "Because I've been through them. And I'm still here. And as long as I'm here, so are you." Across the fence line, unseen by either of them, a sensor light blinked once. Far away, someone was watching. But Adam didn't reach for a weapon. He just held his daughter tighter. Because that was the choice. Not to run. Not to fight. But to stand. And to love louder than fear. The morning rain came soft and silver. It fell in quiet sheets over the rooftops, dusting the streets in a gentle shimmer. It wasn't the kind of storm that made headlines. It was the kind that whispered through small towns like a secret that something was ending, or perhaps just beginning again. The bar was closed, but the porch light was on, and standing beneath it, Maya Miller waited, hood pulled over her golden curls, arms crossed, raincoat too big but worn like armor. She held something in her hand, a small object looped around her fingers, a paracord bracelet, black, frayed at the edges, just like the one her father used to wear. Adam hadn't told her much, only that they needed to stop by the bar for something important, that he'd be a little late, and that she could wait on the porch so long as she stayed dry. She didn't mind. She'd waited for her father before, through late nights, through deployment delays, through surgeries and days when he didn't come out of his room, and every single time he came back. This morning would be no different. From down the block, a figure emerged through the mist. No SUV, no convoy, no spotlight. Just one man, moving with the weight of someone who'd carried more than any uniform could hold. Adam's shoulders were damp. His boots splashed lightly in the puddles. His green jacket was zipped halfway, dog tags tucked beneath a faded t-shirt that read, "Brooks Diner, Texas Proud." But the moment he saw her, his daughter waiting beneath the rain, holding that old bracelet, he stopped. And time stopped with him. Maya ran to him without a word. No dramatic music, no tears, just arms outstretched and heart wide open. Adam dropped to one knee. She collided into him, arms wrapping around his neck, the bracelet pressed between their chests. "I found it," she whispered. He pulled back just enough to see it, his old survival bracelet, the same one he'd given her to play with years ago during a hospital stay, the same one he thought he'd lost. She smiled. It was in the backyard, under the swing. Adam's voice came quiet, thick. It came back. She nodded. "Like you always do." He lifted her into his arms and stood holding her like the world could wait. The rain danced lightly on his shoulders, but neither of them noticed. She reached up and fastened the bracelet around his wrist. It was too tight now. It barely latched. But it fit enough. "You know what this means, right?" she asked. Adam looked at her. "You said it's a promise. That if you're ever lost, this helps you remember the way back." He smiled. "I'm not lost, Bug. Not anymore." Inside the bar, Daniel watched through the window. He didn't wave, didn't step outside. He just smiled to himself. Some moments weren't meant to be interrupted. Later that morning, the three of them sat in the booth, Daniel, Adam, and Maya, sharing grilled cheese and coffee. The Medal of Honor file was still there, now housed in a glass frame on the wall, next to a small, handwritten sign. He never asked for this, but we remember anyway. Maya pointed at the frame. "What's that?" Daniel leaned in. "That's proof your daddy is the bravest man we've ever met." Maya grinned. "I already knew that." Daniel laughed. "Well, now Washington does too." Adam took a bite of his sandwich, then turned to Maya. "I was thinking we could go for a drive after this, maybe to the coast." "You up for it?" She lit up. "Yes, can we bring snacks?" "Absolutely. And music, even if I pick the songs." Adam grimaced playfully. Even then, as they were finishing up, the door opened, and Dylan Brooks stepped in, raindrops still clinging to his jacket. He held something in his hand, a folded piece of paper protected in a sleeve. He walked over and handed it to Adam. "What's this A letter?" Dylan said. "From the base commander. They approved my transfer. I asked to be assigned to youth mentorship training junior cadets, counseling returning vets." He smiled. "I figured I'd try fighting the way you taught me." Adam read the letter, nodded. "You sure?" Dylan looked at Maya, then back at Adam. "Yeah, I'm sure." Adam stood and offered his hand, but this time Dylan didn't shake it. He saluted. Sharp, respectful, earned. Adam returned it with a nod. "Stay dry, soldier," he said. Dylan grinned. "I've got people worth staying dry for now." That afternoon, Adam and Maya drove down the coast, windows down her playlist, blaring pop songs and old-school rock. They didn't talk much. They didn't have to. Sometimes healing sounded like silence filled with music. As the sun began to set, they pulled into a quiet overlook, a grassy hill above the ocean waves crashing gently below. Maya jumped out first, running ahead with her arms wide like wings. Adam followed, slower hands in his pockets. She turned to him, wind whipping through her hair. "Daddy?" "Yeah. Are we safe now?" He walked over, knelt down beside her. "No one's ever completely safe." Bug. She frowned. But we're together, he added, and that makes us stronger than anything that comes our way. She smiled, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a second bracelet. New. Purple and green. Her colors. She slid it onto his other wrist. Just in case you forget again, she said. Adam looked at both bracelets, one from war, one from love, both holding him together. As the sky faded into amber and gold, he wrapped an arm around her, and they sat quietly. No call signs, no ghosts, just Reaper 1, the father, and the girl who brought him home. The first light of dawn broke quietly, not with a shout, but a whisper, soft gold spilling over the ocean horizon, brushing against the waves like a promise. The sky had cleared overnight, as if the storm had made its point, and now stepped aside, letting the world breathe again. On the grassy bluff above the water, Adam Miller stood alone. His silhouette was steady against the rising sun, the outline of his military jacket catching the wind sleeves rolled just enough to reveal 2 bracelets, one black and purple and green wrapped tightly around each wrist. Not armor, not memory. Markers of where he'd been and why he came back. Behind him, the truck sat parked beneath a tall pine tree. Inside, curled beneath a blanket, Maya was still asleep, mouth slightly open, a picture she'd drawn clutched gently in her hand. 2 stick figures, one big, one small, standing under a bright yellow sun. She'd titled it, Me and Daddy, after the storm. Adam smiled when he saw it. He stepped away from the overlook and opened the truck door slowly. She stirred. Daddy morning bug. She yawned. Where are we? Still by the ocean. You fell asleep after the 5th snack. She giggled. I was dreaming we were superheroes. Adam brushed a curl from her forehead. You already are one. They stepped out together, Maya's small hand sliding into his without a word. She looked up at the sun rising above the waves. It's bright, she whispered. Adam nodded. That's how you know it's real. A car pulled into the lot behind them. It wasn't black, wasn't armored. Just an old blue sedan dust on the bumper, a veteran license plate frame hanging loose. The door opened, and Daniel Hayes stepped out holding a paper bag and 2 coffees. I figured you didn't stop for breakfast, he said. Adam gave a half smile. You figured right. He took 1 cup, handed Maya the bag. She opened it with glee. Toast with peanut butter? You remembered, Daniel grinned. I've been a bartender long enough to memorize orders and secrets. They sat on a nearby bench facing the sunrise, the 3 of them. No ranks, no titles, just people. Daniel nodded toward the bracelets on Adam's wrists. You keeping both, Adam looked down at them. One reminds me who I was. The other, who I'm becoming. Daniel let out a soft breath. Did you ever think you'd get here? Adam didn't answer right away. Then I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now I know it means choosing what to carry, what to let go, and who to walk beside. A breeze moved through the grass. Maya munched on her toast, then pointed toward the sun. Daddy, is that where Mommy is? Adam followed her gaze. Maybe he said, or maybe she's right here. He tapped her chest gently. In the way you laugh, in how you hug, in how brave you are when the world gets scary. Maya smiled. She must have been really strong. Adam's voice caught. She was everything good. Before I knew how to be. And now you carry the best parts of her. She leaned into his side. I'm glad I have both of you, even if she's invisible. The moment stretched. Quiet. Full. Then Daniel stood brushing toast crumbs from his jeans. Well, I should head back. Bar doesn't open itself. He looked at Adam. I left something behind the counter for you. It's yours if you want it. Adam raised an eyebrow. Another file. No, Daniel said. just a copy of the picture Maya drew, the one on the fridge. Figured it belonged somewhere other than the bar wall. He gave Maya a wink. "You're a pretty great artist." She beamed. As Daniel walked back to his car, he paused once, looking back at the man and the girl outlined against the sun. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't see a ghost. He saw a light. Later that morning, as they drove home, Maya played music on the radio, singing along loudly, getting the lyrics wrong and not caring at all. Adam let her. He even sang a verse or two, off-key, unapologetic, present. As they neared the house, Maya turned to him. "Daddy, can I ask something?" "Always. Why did they used to call you Reaper 1? He glanced at her. She wasn't asking like a child anymore. She was asking like someone who deserved an answer. He took a breath. "They gave me that name because I went where others didn't want to. Because I did what others couldn't. Because I walked into the dark and came out carrying light." He looked over. "But that's not who I am anymore." Maya tilted her head. "Then who are you?" Now Adam smiled. "Now I'm the man who wakes up to your drawings, who learns Taylor Swift songs he doesn't understand, who packs your lunch, burns the toast, and still shows up every time. A beat. Now I'm just your dad, and that's better than any call sign." She didn't say anything for a while. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a piece of paper folded in half. "I made you a new name," she said shyly. He unfolded it. Written in purple crayon, Lightbringer. A stick figure stood holding a lantern with stars all around him. "I like this one better," she said. Adam looked at the drawing eyes, stinging. "Me too, Bug. Me too." Back inside, Maya ran ahead into the house. Adam stood at the door for a moment, hand resting on the frame. Then he stepped inside. No files. No weapons. No ghosts. Just a man and the life he chose. Far away in a quiet Pentagon office, a digital record was quietly amended. Reaper 1. Status at peace. And somewhere above the ocean, in the place between memory and meaning, the sun rose a little higher. Because sometimes, even the darkest warriors carry light. And sometimes, the bravest thing a soldier can do is come home. Where are you watching from today? We'd love to know what part of the world you call home. Drop a comment below and say hello. It means so much to us to hear from kind souls like you. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to Soul Moment Story. Every week we share gentle, powerful stories that remind us all of the goodness still left in the world. Thank you for spending your time with us. We see you. We appreciate you. And we're so grateful you're here. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep the light alive.